Good morning, everyone, and welcome at the fourth day of the Milano Wine Week. So today we start with a very important masterclass with a very important partner of our event, Masottina, the Dal Bianco family, Federico Dal Bianco, and this masterclass is chaired by a person with whom we have created Milano Wine Week, Cristina Mercuri, who is our next Italian master of wine, and we are very proud to have her here and for her growth. And it's a great pleasure to meet her again. Today we are going to talk about a winery that is changing the perception of Prosecco wine. This is a very interesting topic. Yesterday, during our award ceremony for the wine lists, we talked about the great potential of Prosecco, besides the many wineries that are already very popular. They're growing a lot also in terms of quality. And this is internationally well known, and this project continues to grow. And we have been working together year after year, and every year we raise the bar. It's better and better. And we are very happy to see the growth of this company, this winery that has an entrepreneurial mind, an enological heart, and the love for the territory. And we are very happy to see this growth year after year. So it's a great honor for me to open the fourth day with Federico Dal Bianco and Cristina Mercuri. Enjoy the tasting. Many thanks to Federico and many thanks to the Milano Wine Week staff, and thank you all. Warm welcome to our guests in Shanghai, China. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. We are here to taste some wines from the three major designations where we are. My winery was founded in 1946 by my grandfather. I am part of the third generation. Adriano Dal Bianco, my father, who is the CEO and the enologist of the family, belongs to the second generation. We decided to bring here to the Milano Wine Week for the third time, for the third year. We decided to offer you not just the spumante wines, Conegliano Valdobbiadene, Le Rive and Prosecco DOC, but also two very special wines that are actually the passion of my father, the Conegliano DOCG. And with Cristina, we will see how this small DOCG was created and expanded. And this is something very traditional for us because, as you will see, there will be two different brands, but they always represent the reason why we're here today. That is to say, the enological vision of my family based on three major denominations. Now I leave the floor to Cristina Mercuri. She's a WVZ, and as Federico said, she's the first Italian candidate to become the next Master of Wine. And so I thank you very much for being here and enjoy the tasting. Many thanks, Federico. Welcome to all of you. Before starting, I would like to spend a couple of words about the vision of the Dal Bianco family. In this slide, we have all the generations. Father Adriano with Federico, who is here with us. And so the roles in the family are very well defined because Adriano stands for the history and for the enological part. Can you tell us more about your roles? So how do you always work so well together, focusing on the territory but also looking ahead very much? Well, first of all, our winery, which is a small medium-sized winery internationally and a medium-sized winery in Italy. For us, we have always decided to have the key roles in the hands of the family. So my father is the CEO and the lead enologist, even though we have many other enologists. Then my brother Filippo is in charge of sales, international and national sales. and I represent the, let's say, the image communication marketing, and I am in charge also of production with my father. And then we have the boss. The real boss is my mom. She is head of administration, head of finance, and she keeps us in good order. She because we are always a little bit we tend to follow our instincts, but she is very rational, very well organized, and so she tames us. And also, there is another brother of us who was working with us much more, but now he decided to work in another sector. However, he's part of the family, and like myself and like my other brother, has also a farm where we grow our grapes to our main winery owned by the family. So actually we have these roles in the hands of the family members that are very important for us to grow, because of course we want to grow internationally. We sell in 55 countries across the world so far, but we want to, in any case, remain deeply rooted in our terroir, in our territory. So territory is a buzzword that you hear everywhere. In all master classes, they talk about territory and territory and territory. But in this case, that's right to talk about the territory, because this is the common denominator in all our discussions and conversations. Because if you look at the history of Masottina, and also the palazzi, so all the Dal Bianco wineries were founded, well, they always wanted to be very much rooted in their territory. Let's make some examples and see where they are located, where they have their vineyards, and where their production takes place. First of all, this is just a sort of educational slide, just to set the context. The area of Prosecco is a very large area and can be broken down into some DOCG. So we have the DOC Prosecco, Treviso DOC, and then we have Asolo, that has nothing to do with today's masterclass, because the Dal Bianco family doesn't make the Asolo Prosecco. But then we have Conegliano, and in particular we have Conegliano with a specific area, which is called the Rive. Because the Dal Bianco family, when they decided to make DOC Prosecco, they decided to focus on the area of Treviso. This is the first wine we are about to taste in a few minutes. So what is the difference, first of all, that we can find in the various designations, in the various areas of the DOC and DOCG area? Certainly they have many things in common, but let's start from the differences, the main differences. First of all, there are differences in terms of altitude of the hills and differences in terms of soils. The largest part of the DOC, we have more flatlands and fertile and clay soils. But there is an exception, the area of DOC Treviso. That's an exception. It's also the most ancient part, where the soil is rich of clay, but in any case, these soils are pretty mixed, and therefore they drain the vineyards very well. And in the case of Masottina, the vines are pretty old, because when we talked about the importance of Treviso, and I asked you, why do you want to make wine in Treviso? You told me because it's the most historical area where I can make a glera to make Prosecco DOC, but I treat it in a very special way, as if it was a DOCG. Why? Can you tell me more about this? Well, it's clear that the big success of these three denominations or designations started in the 80s and 90s, but in those days there were just few of us who were exporting Prosecco, mainly from the area of Conegliano Valdobbiadene. Then in 2009 we had a big revolution with the Conegliano Valdobbiadene DOCG when we created the new Prosecco DOC rulebook. Prosecco DOC means 25,000 hectares under vine. With Prosecco Rosé we have 600, 750 million bottles a year. So you can understand very well that it's very challenging to focus on quality with such a large area, with such a large denomination. And so we conducted some analysis for Conegliano Valdobbiadene and our RDO wines. We decided to identify a specific terroir in one of our best hills. And that was the starting point, that was the basis to also make the DOC wines, because we have vineyards in the area of DOC Treviso. We started from a vineyard where it originated, the name of Masottina and the name of Palazzi started, because that's the vineyard where my grandfather started in 1946. And actually the area is called Ai Palazzi, and there is the Casa Masottina, so the farm where it all started. And then you have to say that my father has about 55 cousins, and they all work in the wine sector. You have Dal Bianco Vini, Dal Bianco Spumanti. And so that's why we decided to give ourselves a different name. And so we decided to focus on a territory like Conegliano special. We decided to do the same in Treviso, which is the historical cradle of Prosecco. And so we bought that small vineyard, which is just one plot, and we used it to make this wine, which I may not say this is the first extra brut Prosecco from that designation, but that's certainly the one with the lowest sugar content. Later on we will discuss that when we taste the wine, just to talk about this sense of place. And there are also some natural reasons for that, because it's the soil that makes it possible to have this low amount of sugar. Then we will also taste the most iconic wine of the winery, which is well known international, so the Rive di Ogliano, in the case of the Masottina winery. We know that these Rive are special plots, special vineyards, where due to the environmental conditions, soil, microclimate and exposure, in these vineyards, they can make a much higher quality wine. And also the rule book imposes lower yields. Now we have 43 Rive areas. There are some in Valdobbiadene, some in Conegliano. In the area of Valdobbiadene, we have very steep slopes, and therefore the soils are more clayey, and therefore we have many flavorful and aromatic notes, whereas in the area of Conegliano, where we have the Riva di Ogliano with Masottina, we tend to have much milder hills. The microclimate is slightly warmer, and the soil are more calcareous. And we will see the result in the glass. So the nose is less strong, but the texture on the palate is much stronger. Let's move on, because you have to know that the Dal Bianco family makes wonderful spumante wines, but we also have some examples from Colli di Valdo di Conegliano. Colli di Conegliano is the area in red that you see in the middle, which is pretty small. And always remember that this area is small, but we have a big competition with the sparkling wines. And so I can make easy wine because Prosecco and Prosecco DOCG has a great reputation. So why should I make a still white wine and a still red wine? But they do that, and I will ask Federico why. Later I will ask you many more questions because the history of Colli di Conegliano is very interesting, and I'm sure you will be very much interested to taste the still wine from an area which is very famous for sparkling wines. Yes, the big passion of my family for still red and white wines, not just for Italian wines, also international wines, has been the reason or the starting point for my father to also make these still wines. And perhaps later on I will tell you more about this. And even though this area is small, that's very important for our winery because it's in line with our philosophy, because we want actually to make professionals and consumers aware of the strength of our terroir in Conegliano, which, as you said, Cristina, is part of the large Colli Conegliano di Valdobbiadene and Prosecco DOC denomination. That's a great challenge, and it will be great to hear more about that. In any case, let's start. At least you have 2 full glasses, and let's start to taste them because that's the right time of the day. So let's start from glass number 1. So we are in the area on Prosecco DOC Treviso. And so let me start from bottle number 1, which is Via Venti. That is Treviso DOC Extra Brut. Then the residual sugar is absolutely unusual for a DOC because I don't know if you had a chance to do that, but often in the DOC wines we tend to have more extra dry wines than extra brut wines because these wines become more interesting, easier to drink, and but here we want to communicate the sense of place. So we want to communicate the terroir with these wines. And therefore, let's smell it. On the nose is aromatic, but it's not super intense. I'm sure we tasted much more aromatic Prosecco wines. In my lessons, I tell I see that my students make a mistake. The more aromatic the wine is, the more it's on the front palate, the higher the quality. But that's wrong because true quality is on the palate, on the balance on the palate. So it might be a bit shy at the beginning, but then it might have a great density and texture on the overall palate. So the nose is reminiscent of glera, so the red flowers, sage and citrus fruits and pear, a very precise nose and mature nose. And when you talked about such a low amount of sugar, I remember you told me once, well, we have this clay soil that allows me to have a yield which is well balanced, but with a good aromatic maturity. And therefore, I have the sugar, actually the sweetness from the fruit. I don't need to add sugar, actually. Am I right? Yes, you're right. Also because this terroir is very clayey and with a very good draining capacity. When you have these two features of the soil in the wines, in the sparkling wines, in the spumante wines, you have the wines that are called grassy, lush, or fat. And we think that lush wines are perfect with a low residual sugar, so that we have very well balanced wines. But in any case, it all starts from that vineyard in particular. Yes, and I don't know if you have already tasted the glass. I think so. So if you taste and if you try to keep the wine on the palate for some moments, and if you like, you can swallow the wine, you can drink the wine, even though we have the spittoons, but because this is very pleasant. In any case, on the palate, where do you perceive it? On the front, and then it vanishes, or does it stay? Is it persistent? I think that it is fairly persistent. I mean, it's not a very, very lingering wine, but it's an approachable wine, but it's not to be given for granted. It's not obvious. So it's simple, but it's not obvious, and it's not at all a low quality wine. Actually, I say simple, but it's not simple, because in this case, you can see a wide variety of primary flavors with high acidity, but also a pretty mature acidity. It's not aggressive, it's not pungent. The bubbles are pretty fine, and it's kept 3 months. And therefore the bubbles can become smaller and become more harmonious. And therefore, this wine has a certain gastronomic appeal. So it's good with food. I mean, it's not wine with lots of sugar, which can be maybe best for an aperitivo. This can pair very well with many dishes. What do you think? Do you like this Via Venti? Is it interesting? Please let me know. I see you nodding, and you seem to have happy faces. Okay, let's move on with glass number 2. Glass number 2 is particularly interesting for me because probably you know I have a great passion for rosé wines, and I like to study them. And I like to investigate the style of the wineries, both for Italian rosé and international rosé. And the Prosecco Rosé is a classification which was recently created, but that had a huge success, especially abroad, because the rosé wine trends has a double-digit growth. And so the consumption of rosé wines worldwide has increased by over 15%. And of course, a designation like Prosecco DOC could grasp this opportunity in a very smart way, because Adriano gave a big hand in all this. So tell me, what did you do for the development of the DOC rosé Prosecco? Well, we started in 2020, in October 2020, and the consortium of the DOC, so before changing the rules to make it, conducted some trials in some wineries, some tests, to assess the color intensity and the right range in terms of the amount of the Pinot Noir grapes to make the rosé. The color is extremely important for the rosé. So, because you know that there is a range in terms of color intensity, in terms of shade. Yes, we have a very well-defined color intensity range. So we conducted various tests, and I'm very happy because they chose the color from the test that my father made with 10% Pinot Nero. And actually, in our rule book, we can start from 10% Pinot Nero up to 15% of Pinot Nero. And this is important for us because it tells us that So besides the importance of the territory for this wine, we like to say that since my father is very passionate about rosé wines and he has always made rosé wines, so we've been very proud that they chose our color intensity range. Well, congratulations, because I love this color. Of course, it depends on the climate, it depends on the soil. Some rosé wines have a more intense or less intense color. Recently, generally we have Provençal colors, some pale colors, which are considered elegant. But in any case, let's drink it. Let's take a sip. Then, first of all, on the nose, the area is the same, but it changes completely, because this 10% Pinot Nero tends to have a very important role. You can have these red berries flavors and also some notes of red apple or rhubarb that makes this Prosecco Rosé well made. Prosecco Rosé, very distinctive. Then we have citrusy notes, then pear, green apple, that are typical of the Glera variety. So this wine is very different from the other wine, because the flavors and the aromas are much wider and abundant. So I would say that you can definitely tell where the palate is involved. Here we have 3 grams. No, we have 6 grams per liter of sugar. So let's say that this residual sugar, together with the texture and the structure of Pinot Noir, makes this wine more dense. I don't know if you noticed that, but the wine in the mouth expands, but it also remains pretty compact. It's because of the Pinot Nero, and also because of this higher sugar residue. And I think you find that the acidity is much better balanced thanks to this fruit and the residual sugar. So this wine is more full-bodied, is rounder, and you can pair it. Generally, what do you pair it with? What do you drink it with? Well, I love the rosé wines very much. I think you can pair it with the appetizers, meat, fish, vegetable appetizers. But it's very, very versatile. I think that this addition of Pinot Noir makes it even more elegant and noble to this Prosecco DOC Treviso that is made according to the rules. And it adds new flavors. New aromas too. Yes, if you go back to glass number 1 and you compare because we had just one, the previous one and this rosé wine, you, I'm sure, perceive a different texture, a different structure, because Via Venti Rosé is more linear, is more straightforward, because it has an initial drive and then it stops, whereas the Via Venti Rosé is more ample and more dense. And you can try to do that with your palate. So if you compare the two wines, you see that the behavior is different. So the kindness and the structure of the Pinot Noir is very evident. How many bottles do you make of this rosé wine? About 45,000. For Extra Brut, just 35,000. So the numbers are pretty low for being a DOC. Yes, but that's our idea. So our project is to make something very special in this large denomination, because of course then we have the Treviso called Prosecco called the Cal Maggiore, which is the one that we make with grapes from various areas, and we make the cuvée, like the Contrada Grande. In any case, these are the two wines for the Prosecco DOC Treviso. And that's very interesting because when we talk about the success of a brand or a winery or fine wines, so what makes it successful and iconic? Well, you have the style, consistent quality over time. Then the perception of the brand, the image of the brand created with an historical background. But there is also the idea of scarcity. Because if you just want to focus on a small selection with small quantities of grapes, is part of this approach. This can make it possible to create a strong identity that then can be considered as a reference point for the, like a cornerstone for the denomination, hopefully. And then our guests will confirm or not later on. And of course, feel free to ask questions. Raise your hand. There are microphones, or you tell me and I repeat the question so that everyone can follow everything. Let's move to the third glass. We are at Rive di Ogliano. That's a beautiful picture and a beautiful landscape. The area of Conegliano, as I said, is much milder. So we have mild, low hills, whereas in Valdobbiadene they are much more steeper. They are much steeper. And in this area, the exposures make the wine very special. Why? Well, let's see. In this case, we have two vineyards, which are one next to the other. When I went there, I had one on one side and the other on the other side, but they are so different. And so we have the RDO, Rive di Ogliano Levante, so east, and Rive di Ogliano Ponente, then west. So the western part, which is the one we are tasting now, has relatively young vineyards, about 15-year-old. And the exposure is west, so western exposure. And so they benefit from the sun in the afternoon. So the microclimate is slightly warmer and more sunny. On the other side, in the eastern part, Levante, they are much older, over 60-year-old. And these vineyards are facing towards east. And so they get the sun in the morning. And so the microclimate is colder or fresher, less sunny, and therefore this will have an influence on the glass, on the wine, with a very specific note that later we will describe with the next glass. But now with glass number 4, we are RDO Ponente West, Rive di Ogliano 2022. In this case, sorry, this is number 3, not number 4. So this is Brut, but the residual sugar is very low, ridiculous how much. 4 grams. So they could call it extra Brut, but it's always better just to claim the Brut label instead of extra Brut, just to focus more on the vintage. And you never know every year. Well, we started as Brut in 2013 with a vineyard that was relatively young. But then we lowered the residual sugar from last year because of the evolution of this vineyard. Well, absolutely, you're right. You know, the vineyard is about 10-year-old, was planted 10, 15-year-old years ago. But, you know, a vineyard at the beginning tends to produce a lot, like young people, so they are very energetic, they grow fast. But they produce a product that maybe doesn't have very much fruit concentration and texture. And therefore, it made sense to have a Brut residual sugar. But now the roots are penetrating in the soil, and the vineyard has now found a much better balance, production balance. And since the exposure is so favorable, and since the aromatic maturity is perfect, therefore good balance with acidity, I can have a lower residual sugar. There's no reason why I should keep a higher sugar content. And this makes this wine a very gastronomic wine, therefore that pairs very well with food. Let's smell it. I think that this is a masterpiece, definitely a masterpiece of Conigliano Valdobbiadene, because you can definitely perceive the elegance, accuracy, and this thin, almost restrained wine with this sort of shy highlight. But then this wine speaks of slightly citrusy or talc, sage notes, Mediterranean brush. And the nose is beautiful, definitely. And it's not too cheeky like some young Prosecchi. So we don't have too much floral notes, but we have much deeper notes with this choky note. Beautiful, excellent. And let's take a sip. And then here we see what I said before. So very calcareous soils, very good draining capacity, and very poor. What happens with these soils? Generally, the pH is a bit more alkaline in the soil, and I don't have many minerals or elements such as nitrogen, and therefore the wine will have more acidity, more pronounced acidity, less aromatic notes, but with a stronger structure. I think you can perceive that it's stratified on the palate. When you say Prosecco, you say, okay, it's Prosecco, or, well, it's just Prosecchino, like a wine that is not good quality. But we call it Prosecchino in Italian, like saying low quality Prosecco. But this is not definitely a low quality Prosecco. It's not a Prosecchino. It's a real Prosecco. Even though sometimes Prosecco doesn't have a good image in terms of quality. So it's very rare to find such density on the palate and this structure, this stratification, which is very straight, very like granite. And I think that this can age very well. What do you think about this? I know that you are very passionate about this Ponente wine. Can you tell us more about that? You've been an innovators in this field. What else can you tell us? I have to tell you, this is my favorite wine among our production. And the beauty about these two RDO wines, these Rive di Ogliano wines, so the beauty about these two wines is that we decided to take the two slopes, the two exposures in Ogliano, which is northeast in Collina di Corniero, to show that Ogliano has two souls. West and east, because in the eastern slopes we have these, so we have the influence of the Piave glacier that created a very distinctive soil, and also climate which is very different from the western side, western slope, where we make this wine in particular. And as you've said, that's true. So if you taste them together, you see that there is a common denominator, but it's as if you have two brothers. So one is more shy in the west, the other is maybe more cheeky and arrogant on the east. But we will taste the east after. In any case, this wine, so despite this vineyard is young, this wine has given us plenty of satisfaction because it's very representative of our terroir. In the eastern part of Ogliano, we have these spicy notes. Which you can only find in that place, like white pepper, black pepper, sage, and that's the only place where you find these notes. Okay, so once again, when I talk about sense of place, the idea is to emphasize what the territory offers, its distinctive nature. Let's now compare with the wine from the Levante, from the East. I would like you to tell me about the differences. First of all, let's now, then glass number 4, Ardio Levante, so the East. So I said there is less sun. And so I would expect what? A note which is a bit unripe and citrusy and more acidity on the palate. And therefore, wine that is more straight, which is then well compensated by the extra dry residual sugar. And in fact, the Levante wine, the Eastern wine, is an extra wine, and the residual sugar is 13. 13. Let's smell it. Let's sniff it. And let's compare. Let's compare because it's interesting to taste them both at the same time. Yes, definitely the nose is more citrusy, lemon, orange. The previous one was more restrained, more spicy, whereas this one is more unripe. In any case, we have balsamic notes and the choky notes, mineral notes, even though I don't like very much the word mineral for wine. Then let's take a sip. And here we perceive the work that they did to make this wine well balanced. I don't know if you noticed, but this wine is kind of broken down, but in a positive way. It's not easy to understand this, but focus on acidity first of all. If you taste this wine, you can see that the acidity is very high and it makes you salivate a lot. This acidity is almost pungent, almost kind of very vertical. On the other side, in the other wine, in wine number 3, so RDO Ponente West, had great acidity, but it was more mature, more ripened, more integrated in the fruit. Whereas in this one from the East, we have a higher residual sugar to make it balanced. And so that's why it's an extra dry. Perhaps you can ask the question and then I can repeat it. Cristina will repeat the question in Italian and I will translate it to English because the gentleman is not using the microphone. I cannot hear him. So he was saying, we are talking about lowering residual sugar. And in this case, it's even more evident because we go from an extra brut with 4 grams to an extra dry, which is 13 grams. So now you have the microphone, you can repeat. Yes, my comment was the following. The interesting thing about this comparison between these two wines, East and West, because on one side I have a more freshness in the West with this stratification you mentioned that gives me a very pleasant wine, whereas for the East, I'm thinking of a wine that maybe can age more in the future, even though I don't want to anticipate anything. And it would be interesting to understand from you, because actually you received many interesting awards for these wines. And this is also because the international customers are now appreciating very much this approach. Certainly, you got many awards, and also the customers are very interested. So, can you say something about the awards first of all that you received? Can you tell us more? Well, yes. And if you think that this is the same type of, same enology, same grapes, same winemaking production with the gravity system, more or less the yield on the east is slightly less, just because this is an older vineyard, 60-year-old vineyard. And then we have to say that the distance is about 200 meters. They're very close vineyards, but they have these two souls that are so different, as I've said, both because of the soil, because the soil is totally different, and also the flavors and aromas. On one side, we have more herbaceous notes, more spicy notes, and more typical notes of Conegliano Vardobbiadene, that is to say, citrus fruits, whereas on the east, we have much more citrus fruits notes. We have no spices in East. We have more minerality, probably, but the distinctive feature of the main difference is in the climate, according to us. So the microclimate matters a lot because, the glacier was coming down on the hills and created the Canale del Fadarto, which is the channel so from Venice, that takes from Venice up to Munich in Germany. So the night and the night fresh winds reach these eastern slopes much more, and so the grapes that already have more concentration because the vineyard is older, these grapes get even more concentrated by these fresh winds, continuous winds, because in Ogliano, in our zoning book that we have with the consortium, so Ogliano is defined as a windy village because there's lots of wind. And the eastern part has definitely these characteristics. So huge aromatic intensity because the grapes are so concentrated. And that's why we have this great acidity, which we are forced to balance, to counterbalance with a higher residual sugar. But this is the distinctive feature. If I have to tell you one thing about this wine, I would tell you big structure. It's and actually, as our guest said, it has also a great aging potential. And actually, then we will taste the glass number 5, which is again RDO Levante. And this is Rive di Ogliane Masottina 2016. Then we will taste this great aging potential. So this is unprecedented because, Prosecco is not aged in general. It's made to drink it now. But please tell me more about the awards you received for these wines. You received quite a few. I remember 3 at least. Yes, also, and the longevity of this wine, this aging potential, is something very important for my family, for all wines. And also for the Via Venti, we are aging some vintages to see the evolution, because this is the heritage of our family. So the old vintages, the historical vintages, are a very important heritage for us. And also to answer to what Matteo said, let's say that for awards, definitely we are very happy because in particular the Levante wine, we, much to our surprise, in 2021, So with the year 2019 was included in the 100 best wines for Wine Spectator by Wine Spectator, which is something truly which is a sort of watershed between what we did before and what we did after that. But also in the first years, 2011, 13, also the Decanter magazine, in particular Michael Edwards, a great expert and wine writer about Metodo Classico and Champagne, called me and told me that this was the champion, the number one wine, because it was able to, it was actually the Prosecco as Prosecco is supposed to be. So the real Prosecco, meaning that it's a structure. At the beginning, when he tasted it, he didn't even think it was a Prosecco. Sometimes I put it in blind tastings with Metodo Classico, and people get confused. We received many awards in any case, both nationally and internationally. But what I'd like to say is that we aren't just awarded for the last years, but for instance, Wine Spectator gave us the award for this 2-year wine. And the Americans do love these wines that are aged much more than Italians. And already in 2021, we had already many vintages, and we started with Milano Wine Week with this project with tasting with aged Conegliano Valdobbiadene, because the potential for aging, so the longevity of Riva di Ogliano is very strong. We are fully aware that that's very important. And with our RDO Ambassador project is intended also to offer it in fine dining restaurants. And this is something unique, something that goes beyond, the preset strategies and sometimes trivial strategies for the large denomination. Because this is a wine, this is an area that that was actually born about 100 years ago, but it has for the modern Prosecco, but it has 200 years of history, and in Conegliano we have the oldest enological school. And then we will taste the red wines from that terroir, and you will definitely see that the terroir in this place is very special, because we can have all these expressions, excellent expressions in the wines. And then now we have created lots of expectations for the aged Prosecco. So are you ready to taste 2016? Well, 2016 is regarded as being a very balanced and elegant vintage. So wines with a great aging potential, great structure, and harmony on the nose. And so also in the area of Conegliano, that year was very lucky. First of all, let's sniff the wine. Certainly the citrusy notes become more candied fruit, more evolved, even though the lemon and orange notes are still present. So we have the primary aromas, then we have acacia, honey, and croissant notes. And so you start to confuse it with Metodo Classico, with these more croissant breaded notes. Let's now taste it. So what sugar does for an aged wine? We have the Maillard reaction. Then we have compounds that give extra complexity on the palate. And as you can tell, in you cannot perceive this year. And of course, this year's wine is more angular, more presumptuous, whereas this aged Prosecco is much more harmonious, more well carefully thought out, thanks to the so-called bottle aging and thanks to the blend between acidity and residual sugar. However, we have a great density and also a long finish, so this persistent finish. I still perceive the honey notes. It's slightly dry on the finish, and I like it because this means that I can drink this wine also with a nice dish. And Michelin-starred restaurants, not just in Milan, also elsewhere, have the Riva di Oliano wines from Levante with gourmet dishes in their menus. So with complex dishes. So I think that this is a nice pearl, a nice jewel. I remember when we tasted this back until 2010, and I hope that our guests will have a chance to taste these aged wines, which are very unique and very special. Yes, of course, the longer the longevity, the more this wine becomes a gastronomic wine and can be paired with gourmet or fine dining dishes. And do you remember the residual sugar for 2016? I think it was slightly higher than 2021. And maybe 15, I would say 14.5, 15. In any case, the idea is that if you go backward to the younger wine tastes sweeter because it takes time to have a well integrated sugar. So as you can see, we have two different wines, very pleasant wines, but with one we have the impact of time on the fruit. So we had a beautiful overview of the Masottina wines. Let's close with the other brand called Ai Palazzi and the famous Colle di Conegliano DOCG. Why do I say famous? Well, because few people know it, but it's a tiny little area, very unique and very special. And there are 33 wineries, right? Only 110,000 bottles only. So tiny little area. You created it in 1993. It became DOCG in 2011. And your father played a key role in this. Can you tell me more? Yes, this designation was DOC in 1993, and this was the result of a project with the Research Institute and the Enology School and some wineries, such as our winery. We decided to plant these vineyards in 1993, and the first wine was ready in 1996. And the philosophy behind this project, this wine that we conducted with the Enology School, was to make a wine in the Conegliano terroir. And remember that in 1993 we had Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco, and it was called Prosecco di Conegliano Valdobbiadene DOC. It was already extremely successful, but it was not the way it is right now. So there were quite a few wineries that were making other products. And especially in the area of Conegliano, because the terroir is very special. And you can make also still white and red wines. I don't have much time to describe this project, but in a nutshell, I can tell you that the idea was to use international varietals, the classical Bordelais blend for red, and for white wine, Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, Riesling, Sauvignon, very international varieties, but with also some grapes from our territory. So we have a Marzemino in the red wine, which is not the Marzemino from Trento. It's like a Petit Verdot in France. And in the white, we have the Manzoni Bianco, that had a different name in the past, which was created by Professor Manzoni at the Enology School with a crossbreeding between Pinot Bianco and Riesling. And so that experiment, that test, attracted the interest and the curiosity of our producers, who decided to plant these varieties. And so at a certain point, so thanks to the many awards that we received, especially for the red wine Montesco, international awards, so consistently over the years, not just by my winery, even though we had a lot, but also the other wineries got many awards. Then we reached the DOCG level. This is incredible because the number of bottles is very low. And definitely your father gave a great contribution in all this, not just to create this DOCG, but because he wanted to focus on the quality of these wines, because this denomination was created in 1993, but you kept experimenting, you kept improving until the beginning of 2000, both in the vineyard and in the cellar. So you have improved and you have fine-tuned this style for many years. And think of the care, of the focus you have to put to make this wine, even though the quantities are very small, 9,000 bottles for Rizzardo and 10,000 for Montesco. So if you consider the overall production of a winery in Conegliano Valdobbiadene, these figures are very low. So why did you decide to go for it? Then we will taste it. I think it was more a challenge. Actually, this was a great passion of my family. My father, he was very happy with this project with the Enological School where he studied. And this is a wine that represents fully, as we said, the identity of our family. As I said, my mom is the boss. And so this is, a kind of unconventional personality that wants to do something that others maybe don't believe or are afraid of. On the contrary, we jumped into it. So we pioneered it. I remember that my father took the two best vineyards we had on the hill and planted these grapes because he wanted to make these wines there because he thought that was the right place. So he took the best plots to make these wines. So the idea is to make something iconic by blending international varieties, but also some local varieties. So let's taste our Rizzardo. We have 2018. This is a beautiful story because the various vineyards are all in the same area. We have some Chardonnay, some Chardonnay, Riesling, and Pinot Blanc. And then the indigenous variety is Manzoni Bianco. So these grapes are co-fermented, partly in stainless steel and partly in wood. Then later the wine, by the way, let me clarify, before fermentation we have a short pre-fermentation in contact with the skins to emphasize the flavors and aromas and make it more structured. So after this fermentation, the wine spends 2 years in wood, 50% in French oak barrels. So also the winemaking style is aspirational. And you can tell that from the nose, because the nose is very well defined, that is peach and lemon and notes of Chardonnay, but also a note of apricot and this slight elderberry flower with this toasty vanilla note that come from these new oak barrels, and all well balanced, well blended. Probably the fermentation in the barrels creates more oxygen, and then there is a very good balance already on the nose. Let's now take a sip. So before we were talking about wines that you perceive more up on the front or in the mid palate. This is a very round wine, so it extends, it amplifies on the palate, and then it stands in the mid palate, and then it goes away. It has a very long, with a very long, lingering finish. So thanks to this blend, but also this aspirational winemaking style, this wine is reminiscent of some Bourgogne wines, maybe in warm years, for instance, 2018. So the acidity, of course, is very different, and the latitude is different, but there is a very good balance between the crispy fruit and the wood that makes me think of French wines. This is a wine which is mainly sold in Italy, right? Yes, in Italy, our partners with whom we started working love both wines. Of course, from the commercial standpoint and in terms of quantity, since we make very little, we can sell these wines only in small quantities because we don't make much. And also, I have to say that in Italy, they understood immediately, whereas abroad it's a bit more difficult because abroad in other countries, they classify the Italian regions based on the typical wines of each region. So if we take Veneto, our region, for the Conegliano, Valdobbiadene and Treviso, they just see Prosecco and maybe Pinot Gris because of Friuli, but the red wines are from Verona. And actually, they make beautiful wines in Verona. They have a very, very good wines. But in any case, we like to make these wines. Our partners, who are also our friends, so our they call these wines friend makers because it's easy to surprise your friends with these wines. When you talk about Conegliano, Prosecco, etc., but then you offer these wines that are very different, it's a big surprise for your guests, for your friends. I'm sure that you were surprised, especially by this white wine, because the quality is very high. Let's now taste the red wine. We also have a nice story for the red wine. So please tell me more about what happened at a trade show many years ago. I remember you told me this anecdote with your father. Yes, we have this anecdote for Montesco, this red wine, because, my father made hundreds of tests with this wine because he didn't know which kind of barrels to use, casks or French or Italian barriques, what kind of toasting, etc. And the vineyard was young, and he didn't know. He was just trying to tame this crazy horse, and tried to interpret it in the best possible way and understand what was the best solution to make the best wine. And so he made hundreds of tests, and also for how long to keep it in the barrels, or in stainless steel vats, or in oak barrels, etc. Then at a certain point, at around 2000, we didn't do 2001 because we had lots of hailstorm. We had a big hailstorm. In any case, in 2002, Actually, there is this anecdote which is quite curious, but it makes you understand a lot about this wine. Because my father was in Hong Kong with my mom, and they were at the Wine Expo trade show in Hong Kong. And he was there with this Prosecco, etc. But he brought this wine for the first time. And he had the 1998 for this Montesco. And at a certain point, a gentleman stopped at the booth. He tasted the spumante wines, and then he asked us if we can taste this red wine. And he tasted it and asked my father 1,000 questions from the technical standpoint. And my father understood that this man was a true professional, true wine professional. And so my father answered, and he asked about type of blend, type of varieties, how big the vineyard was, type of winemaking technique, for how long on the skins, on the yeasts, and the délestage, the pumping over, etc. To make a long story short, and he said, but how long does it last? And it was 1998. It was Hong Kong back in 2002. So and my father didn't know what to say. How long does it last? I don't know. He planted it in 1993 and then made the first wine in 1996. And so that was a young wine for him. There was no history behind it. He didn't know how it would become over the years. And so he didn't give any answer. He said, well, I don't know how long it can last. But this gentleman said, I don't know how long this wine can last, but I'm sure that it will last, and it will last long. And actually, it was Penfolds enologist. And so my father got finally convinced that he should continue. I mean, he was already very passionate about this wine, but that comment, so what that gentleman told him, so this was a very important enologist for a very important winery, so one of the most iconic wineries in the world. They make excellent wines. And these wines have great longevity. And so that comment was very important for my father. And we will perceive this in the glass. And so we want to present it because we haven't communicated much about it. So here we have 2017, which is on the market now. Just to make you understand the character, the young personality of this. And this is a 20, we also brought a 2010. And this is still a baby. So it's going to be very interesting to see the comparison. Io sento due voci contemporaneamente. So this is a very interesting wine. Sento un cinese che mi parla nella... So this wine is aged in barrique for 2 years, and then it's kept in the bottle. Then if we smell it, you can tell, you can perceive the Bordelais blend. You can perceive the blueberry leaf, then the cigar box notes, plum, and also the graphite note, flint note, then toasty note, oak note, which is not too pervasive. So we have a great fruit concentration in good balance with the oak flavors. You use young new casks. Let's let's confirm by taking a sip. So I like this acidity that grasps your tongue and remains very refreshing. And tannins, the tannins cover your palate and your gums, but it's not too dry, not too dehydrated. It's very mature, slightly granular, but that's normal for a Bordeaux blend, and it's very aspirational. Let's compare it with 2010 and let's see what happens if you age it. You see that the nose is very similar to 2017. Of course, 2010 was a spectacular year. It's very similar to 2016. So I took the old years because these 2 years were very similar. Pretty fresh, rainy, but cold, but very warm during the day. Two very similar years, two very similar vintages. And you can see that the acidity is more shy compared to 2017, but it's velvety. So the tannins are very well balanced, still with a great potential, with a great grip on the palate. And the finish is very long. So in a blind tasting, I think we would not perhaps even able to identify it. I might think of a international wine, a foreign wine, because that's pretty unusual for an Italian wine. Well, unfortunately, we don't have much time left, and I have to thank Federico for this beautiful masterclass. First of all, do you have questions? Do you have questions here or from Shanghai? Any questions? No, they say that there are no questions. Never mind. It's a pity to close this masterpiece, to this masterclass, but I hope I conveyed the great value of the brands of the Dal Bianco family and how these brands are deeply rooted in the territory to emphasize their international vision for Prosecco with Masottina and then Colli di Oliano with the still wines, but always with a very strong presence on the territory. So thank you. Thanks, Federico. I want to thank you all. And thank you all for being with us today.